The gavel sounded less like wood striking wood and more like a gunshot echoing through the sterile, high-ceilinged courtroom. Across the polished oak table, Brooke didn't even flinch. She sat perfectly upright, her tailored cream blazer immaculate, a single diamond tear catching the harsh fluorescent light right on the crest of her cheekbone. It was a masterclass in performative grief. Then she leaned over to her attorney, whispered something, and turned her gaze directly to me. There was no sadness in her eyes, only the cold, calculating look of a predator checking its traps. 10 minutes later, my attorney slid a stapled packet of financial disclosures across the table. My eyes blurred as they hit the final figure on the page. She wasn't just asking for the house, the savings, and primary custody of Chloe. She was asking for $6,000 a month in permanent spousal support. Mr. Vance, Judge Martinez said, her voice cutting through the ringing in my ears. Your wife's counsel has presented a documented standard of living that you established over a 7-year marriage. Do you have any material evidence to contest these figures today? I looked down at my hands. The calluses from years of running raw walnut and white oak through the planer were stained dark with wood walnut oil. Hands that had built the very cradle our daughter slept in. Hands that were now being legally forced to sign away the next 20 years of my life to a woman who had spent the last 18 months systematically dismantling our family. We need a continuance, Your Honor. My lawyer, Vance McAllister, said, his voice level but strained. There are discrepancies we are still investigating. Brooke's attorney scoffed, a short, sharp sound that filled the room. Your Honor, Mr. Vance is simply delaying the inevitable. My client sacrificed her career prospects to support his artisanal furniture business. She has zero independent income, zero assets outside of the marital estate, and a 6-year-old child to care for. He is trying to starve her out. Judge Martinez sighed, looking over her glasses at me. 3 weeks, Mr. McAllister. If you don't have definitive proof of a change in financial circumstances by then, I will rule on the temporary order as submitted. This court will not let a mother struggle while the primary earner plays stall tactics. As the courtroom cleared, Brooke walked past me. The scent of her expensive French perfume, the one she claimed she could only afford because she saved the grocery money, drifted into my space. She didn't look at me, but as her shoulder brushed mine, she whispered just loud enough for me to hear. You should have just signed the first agreement, Miles. Now I'm taking the workshop too. The drive back to the industrial district was a blur of gray Portland rain against the windshield. Every windshield wiper stroke seemed to beat out a rhythm of failure. $6,000 a month. My workshop, Vance Custom Timber, made good money, but it was a boutique operation. After paying my 2 apprentices, buying premium domestic hardwoods, and maintaining the heavy machinery, my take-home pay fluctuated between $80,000 and $100,000 a year. $6,000 a month after taxes would literally put me out of business. It would put me on the street that I pulled up to the corrugated steel building that had been my sanctuary for a decade. The smell of cedar sawdust and industrial wax usually instantly calmed my heart rate. Today, it felt like walking into a mausoleum. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Derek. Tell me the judge didn't buy her helpless housewife routine. That I hit the speaker button and tossed the phone onto a stack of rough-cut maple boards. She bought it hook, line, and sinker, Derek. I have 3 weeks to prove Brooke has money she isn't telling us about, or the judge is signing the order. Miles, she's hiding something. I'm telling you. Derek's voice was fierce. As an architectural draftsman, he worked with the same high-end interior designers Brooke used to rub shoulders with back when she did freelance staging. A woman doesn't go from crying about the price of organic milk to wearing $300 boots to a custody hearing unless she's got a fresh revenue stream. We checked her bank statements, Derek. We ran a standard asset check. Her personal account has $84 in it. The joint account is drained down to the minimum balance. On paper, she is destitute. Then she's using cash, or she's got a corporate shield, Derek said. Listen, I'm meeting a designer named Evelyn tonight at a gallery opening in the Pearl District. She specializes in those ultra-luxury mid-century modern flips. The ones where billionaires buy a mid-century home and spend $1 million making it look like a museum. Evelyn mentioned a new exclusive supplier she's using for custom built-ins. Said the pieces look remarkably like your signature joinery style, but the broker is someone else. Let me dig around. Don't get yourself into trouble, man. I sighed, rubbing the bridge of my nose. Brooke's lawyer is looking for any reason to slap a restraining order on me or claim I'm harassing her. I'm just talking shop at a gallery, Miles. Hang tight. Don't sign anything. That evening, the silence of my small, rented one-bedroom apartment was deafening. It was Tuesday, which meant Chloe was with Brooke at her mother's condo. The apartment felt temporary, sterile, filled with cheap particle board furniture I couldn't bear to replace with my own work because every piece of wood reminded me of the home I had lost 6 months ago. Brooke had told me she needed space to find her soul again. She claimed the stress of my long hours at the workshop had suffocated her creativity. I had believed her. I had felt guilty. I blamed myself for every late night spent finishing a boardroom table or a hotel lobby installation. I had willingly moved out into this apartment, leaving her in our beautifully restored 1920s craftsman home, thinking a few months of space would heal us. Instead, 3 weeks after I moved out, I was served with divorce papers at my shop in front of my apprentices that I walked over to the small kitchen counter and opened my laptop. For the 100th time, I went through Brooke's public social media. Her Instagram was a curated gallery of minimalist sorrow. Photos of Chloe playing in the park with captions like, "Just the two of us against the world," and finding strength in the quiet moments. There were no tags, no check-ins at expensive restaurants, no hints of luxury. She looked like a struggling single mother doing her best. But then I noticed something in a photo posted 3 days ago. Chloe was sitting at a gorgeous, live-edge walnut dining table, coloring with markers that my breath caught in my throat that I zoomed in on the photo until the pixels began to break apart. The table had a very specific, interlocking butterfly joinery at the seam, a technique I had spent 5 years perfecting. It was a joint designed to allow the wood to expand and contract naturally without cracking. More importantly, it was a joint I had only ever taught to one person 3 years ago. When Brooke expressed interest in learning the basics of woodworking, I had brought her into the shop for 3 months. I taught her how to select grain patterns, how to use the Japanese hand saws, and how to execute that exact butterfly key. She had been a natural, but she quickly complained that the work was too dirty, too hard on her hands, and she stopped coming to the shop entirely. I stared at the image. The table wasn't one of mine. The finish was slightly different, a high-gloss polyurethane instead of the matte oil finish I preferred. If it wasn't mine, and it wasn't a commercial piece, where did it come from? The next morning, the rain had cleared, leaving Portland under a crisp, pale blue sky. I was at the shop early, the heavy whine of the table saw helping to drown out my thoughts. I was working on a white oak console table for a corporate client when a shadow fell across the bay door. I shut off the saw. The blade spun down to a silent halt. Standing there was Chad Harrington. Chad was a prominent high-end real estate developer in the city. He was the kind of guy who wore $1,000 suits with designer sneakers and spoke in continuous marketing jargon. I had done 3 major custom installations for his luxury condo projects over the last 2 years. He was an arrogant jerk, but his checks always cleared. "Miles," Chad said, stepping over a pile of oak shavings without looking down. He held a leather portfolio under his arm. "Glad I caught you. I need to cancel the remaining order for the Pacific Heights project." I blinked, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of my forearm. "Cancel it. Chad, we already rough-cut the timber for the master bedroom built-ins. That's $10,000 worth of select-grade rift-sawn oak. The contract says cancellations after material procurement forfeit the deposit." Chad gave a smooth, dismissive wave of his hand. "Keep the deposit, Miles. I don't care about the 10 grand. We're changing the design direction, going with a different vendor who has a more modern, agile approach to production. Your lead times are just too long for our current cycle." My stomach tightened. The Pacific Heights project was supposed to be my financial life raft for the next 3 months. It was the income one was counting on to pay Vance McAllister's retainer fees. A different vendor? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. There are only 3 shops in the Pacific Northwest that can handle the volume of architectural woodwork you need at that quality level, Chad. And they all charge double what I do. Well, let's just say a new player entered the market. Chad smiled, a flash of bright white teeth that didn't reach his eyes. Someone with fresh ideas. No hard feelings, man. It's just business. Send my accountant the final invoice for the materials. He turned and walked out, his sleek black sports car roaring to life in the gravel lot outside a moment later. I stood there, surrounded by the smell of sawdust, feeling the walls closing in. First the Alimony hearing. Now my biggest commercial client walks away without a second thought, completely unbothered by losing a $10,000 deposit. It didn't make sense. In the real estate development world, nobody throws away 10 grand unless they are saving 50 grand somewhere else. That MY phone rang 2 hours later. It was Vance McAllister. Miles, we have a problem, Vance said without preamble. Brooke's attorney just filed an emergency motion for temporary fees. Because we requested a continuance, they are claiming Brooke cannot afford her rent this month. They want the judge to order an immediate assignment of your workshop's business checking account to cover her expenses until the final hearing. They can do that. I yelled, my voice cracking. That's the operating capital. If they freeze that account, I can't buy lumber. I can't pay my guys. I can't pay the electricity bill. If the judge believes she is completely without funds, yes, a temporary emergency support order can attach to business revenues, Vance explained grimly. We need something tangible, Miles. We need to prove she has independent income within the next 48 hours, or I won't be able to stop this. I hung up the phone, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I felt like I was drowning in plain sight. I walked out of the shop office and looked at my 2 apprentices, young guys who relied on me to pay their rent, to feed their families. If Brooke shut the shop down, it wasn't just my life she was ruining. Just then, Derek walked through the side door. He didn't look like his usual laid-back self. His face was pale, and he was holding a printout of an incorporation document. Miles, Derek said. His voice hushed as he pulled me into the small office and slammed the door shut. You need to look at this right now. What is it? I don't have time for gallery gossip, Derek. Brooke's trying to freeze the shop accounts. This is the shop account, Miles, Derek said, slamming the paper onto my desk. I talked to Evelyn last night. I got the name of the exclusive new luxury woodwork broker everyone in the Pearl District is suddenly using. The company is called Aura Timber Designs. I looked at the document. It was a state of Oregon LLC registration from 4 months ago. Okay, so a new shop opened up. What does that have to do with me? Look at the registered agent, Miles. Look at the corporate address. I leaned in, my eyes scanning down the legal text. The registered agent wasn't Brooke Vance. It was an anonymous corporate registry service based out of Delaware. But the physical operating address for the workshop facility wasn't listed. It was a secure commercial P.O. box in downtown Portland. However, listed under the Authorized Managers section, there were 2 names. The first name was Chad Harrington. The second name was Brooke Sterling. Her maiden name. My heart stopped beating for a full 3 seconds. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Chad Harrington, my biggest client who had just canceled his contract with me, was co-owning a timber design company with my wife. The wife who was currently telling a family court judge that she had $84 to her name and 0 career prospects. There's more, Derek whispered, leaning over the desk. Evelyn let slip that Aura Timber Designs just landed a massive $300,000 contract for Chad's new luxury high-rise development. The exact project he just pulled you off of. They aren't just a broker, Miles. They are actively manufacturing custom furniture. High-end, luxury pieces. But where? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, my mind racing through the logistics. You can't just set up a professional woodworking facility overnight in a garage. You need 3-phase power, commercial dust collection systems, industrial-grade CNC machines, planers, jointers. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars in machinery. I don't know where the shop is, Derek said. But Evelyn told me one more thing. Aura Timber Designs is hosting an exclusive private launch event tomorrow night for the city's top interior designers. It's being held at a private warehouse property near the riverfront. Admission is strictly invite only. I stared at the incorporation paper, the names Chad Harrington and Brooke Sterling burning into my retinas. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The sudden divorce filing. The refusal to negotiate. The absurdly high alimony demand. She didn't want the $6,000 a month because she needed to live. She wanted to use the legal system to bankrupt my shop, eliminate her new company's primary local competitor, and force me into a financial corner where I could never contest custody of Chloe. She hadn't just left me. She had weaponized my own trade against me, partnering with my largest client to steal my livelihood from under my feet. Miles, Derek asked, looking at my expression with growing concern. What are you going to do? I stood up, the crushing weight of panic suddenly evaporating, replaced by a cold, hard, terrifying clarity. I'm going to that launch party, Derek. You can't just walk in there, Derek warned. Chad has security at all his events. If you cause a scene, Brooke will use it in court on Thursday morning to prove you're unstable. She'll get a temporary restraining order, and you won't even be allowed within a mile of Chloe. I looked out the office window at the workshop floor, my eyes landing on a finished, pristine custom walnut coffee table waiting for delivery. A piece that bore my signature butterfly joinery. I'm not going to cause a scene, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I'm going to deliver some furniture. The next evening, the rain returned with a vengeance, turning the Willamette River into a churning, slate-gray torrent. The warehouse district near the docks was dark, save for a single, beautifully renovated brick building illuminated by expensive, warm LED uplighting. Valet drivers in black coats were parking luxury SUVs as Portland's design elite hurried inside under large umbrellas that I sat in my battered Ford F-250 pickup truck across the street, the engine idling quietly. In the back of the truck, wrapped tightly in moving blankets and secured with industrial straps, was the walnut coffee table. I was wearing my one good charcoal suit, the cuffs slightly tight around my wrists. My hands were clean, the sawdust scrubbed out from under my fingernails, but the calluses remained. I watched through the rain-streaked window as a sleek black Porsche pulled up to the entrance. The valet opened the door, and Chad Harrington stepped out, looking immaculate in a tailored midnight blue tuxedo. He walked around to the passenger side and opened the door. Brooke stepped out. She took Chad's arm, laughing at something he said. She was wearing an emerald green silk gown that probably cost more than 3 months of my apartment rent. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo, and around her neck was a brilliant, sparkling diamond pendant I had never seen before in my life. She looked radiant, wealthy, and completely untouchable. There was no trace of the heartbroken, struggling mother who had wept in front of Judge Martinez just 24 hours earlier. I waited until they disappeared inside the heavy timber double doors of the warehouse that I reached into my glove box and pulled out a small, high-definition digital audio recorder Derek had lent me. I slipped it into my inside breast pocket, checked that the microphone was clear of the fabric, and turned it on. I got out of the truck, ignored the rain ruinously spotting my suit jacket, and walked straight toward the entrance. I got out of the truck, ignored the rain ruinously spotting my suit jacket, and walked straight toward the entrance. That a heavy-set security guard in a black suit stood just inside the foyer, holding a digital tablet. He looked up as I approached, his eyes immediately assessing my worn leather shoes and the slight ruggedness of my frame. "Invitation only tonight, sir," he said, his voice flat. "I'm here for the special delivery," I said, keeping my tone perfectly professional, projecting the voice of a vendor who belonged there. "For Mr. Harrington and Ms. Sterling. The centerpiece installation for the main gallery floor." The guard looked down at his tablet, frowning. "I don't see a delivery scheduled on the manifest for this hour." "Check under Vance Timber," I said softly. Before the guard could scroll through his list, the inner doors swung open, and the loud, ambient hum of jazz music clinking champagne glasses, and wealthy laughter spilled into the foyer. Brooke walked out into the hallway, holding a glass of vintage champagne. She was looking down at her phone, speaking rapidly. "Chad, the caterer needs to bring out the truffled arancini now. The designers are all ready." She stopped dead in her tracks. Her phone slipped slightly in her hand as her eyes lifted and locked onto mine. The color completely drained from her face. The elegant, poised smile she had worn just moments ago shattered instantly, leaving behind a raw, naked look of absolute terror. "Miles?" she whispered, her voice trembling as she looked at the security guard, then back to me. What are you doing here?" I took a step forward, the security guard instantly shifting his weight to block me, but I didn't try to push past. I just looked at my wife, the woman I had loved for a decade, the mother of my child, and gave her a polite, devastatingly calm smile. "Hi, Brooke," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the brick foyer. "I just came by to see the new business, and I think you left something out of your financial disclosures." At that exact moment, Chad Harrington stepped out of the main hall, a glass of scotch in his hand. "Brooke, babe, the city councilman just arrived. We need to." Chad stopped, his eyes widening as he recognized me. His arrogant composure slipped for a fraction of a second before his face hardened into a scowl. "Vance," Chad snapped, gesturing to the security guard. "Get this guy out of here right now. He's trespassing. Call the police." "I wouldn't do that, Chad," I said, reaching slowly into my jacket. Brooke gasped, taking a step back as if she thought I was pulling a weapon. Instead, I pulled out a certified, stamped legal document, the emergency motion to freeze my business accounts that her lawyer had filed that morning. "You see, Brooke," I said, holding the paper up so she could see the court seal through the dim light of the foyer. "Your lawyer told the judge today that you can't afford rent. But I'm looking at a $300,000 contract with Harrington Development that has your signature on it. And tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Judge Martinez is going to look at it too." Brooke's eyes darted between the paper and my face, a manic, trapped expression taking over her features. She leaned closer to me, her voice dropping to a harsh, venomous whisper that the security guard couldn't hear over the roaring jazz music inside. "You think you're smart, Miles? You think this changes anything? You can't prove a damn thing in court tomorrow. Aura Timber doesn't own a single piece of manufacturing equipment. We don't have a workshop footprint. We're just a design consultancy. The money is legally shielded in an offshore trust Chad set up. On paper, I'm still broke. You will still pay me every single month, and you will still lose the shop." She took a slow sip of her champagne, her confidence rushing back as she realized the legal loopholes they had constructed. She smiled, a cruel, beautiful twist of her lips. "That you're a carpenter, Miles. You play with wood. We play with millions. You're completely out of your depth. Now get out before I have you arrested for stalking." I stared at her, letting the silence stretch between us for 3 agonizing seconds. I looked at Chad, who was watching me with a smug, victorious grin. "You're right, Brooke," I said softly, stepping back toward the glass exit doors. "I am just a carpenter. But a good carpenter always knows exactly how to find the structural flaw in a house before it collapses." I turned and walked out into the pouring rain, leaving them standing in the golden glow of their stolen luxury. I climbed back into my truck, my hands shaking slightly as I reached into my breast pocket and pulled out the digital audio recorder. I pressed the stop button, then hit play. Brooke's voice came through the speaker, crystal clear, cutting through the sound of the rain hitting the truck roof. "The money is legally shielded in an offshore trust Chad set up. On paper, I'm still broke. You will still pay me every single month, and you will still lose the shop." I smiled, a cold, hard feeling settling deep in my chest. But as I put the truck in gear and pulled away from the curb, my phone rang. It was the babysitter I had hired to watch Chloe at my apartment for the evening while Brooke was supposedly at a charity dinner. "Miles?" The teenager's voice sounded panicked, breathing heavily. "Miles, you need to come back to the apartment right now." "What's wrong? Is Chloe okay?" My heart leaped into my throat. My foot slamming onto the brake pedal. Two men in suits just showed up with a moving truck. The girl cried. They said they have a court-ordered emergency eviction notice signed by a judge. They're changing the locks on your apartment right now, Miles. They're putting all of Chloe's things out on the sidewalk in the rain.